You're with God, Day 85. Today is the last day of our focus on the spiritual discipline of confession. And the reading for the last day comes out of Psalms 130. The psalm starts out talking about if God held us to account for all of our sin, no one would be able to stand before Him. I think it's a great reminder that God gives us not what we deserve, but what we receive from God comes from His grace. Towards the end of the reading, they had the reading was chapter 130, verses 1 through 8. As you get to the end of that, the emphasis is on the steadfast love of God. And I think that's one of the things that we need to remember when we're dealing with the spiritual discipline of confession. The fact that the love of God is not something that is transient. It's not something that is fickle. It's not something that easily wavers. It's something that is steadfast, that is firm, that we can count on regardless of our sin. But God commended His love towards us, and that while we were still sinners, in that state, Christ died for us. I think that steadfast love of God is something that we lose sight of when we focus too much on ourselves and our failings. And I think as long as we focus on ourselves and our failings, the odds are greater that we will continue in those failings. But if our focus is on the steadfast love of God, I think if we view that in the right way, not view it as a license, I think we can view it as something that calls us into righteousness, calls us into holy living, calls us into an equally steadfast pursuit of the life of Christ. And I think it's a good way to end the discussion on confession. We've looked at confession from a bunch of different angles, but I think the overriding theme ultimately comes back to this. It comes back to the idea that our relationship with God is founded not in ourselves, not in our performance, but rather is based on the steadfast love of God. That's where our hope is. That's where our relationship flows from. So, that's it for Day 85, Spiritual Discipline of Confession. Tomorrow we start looking at the spiritual discipline of worship.